move this closer. This video is a couple hours after the end of the third round of the NFL draft. A third round that we did not see Shedeur Sanders get picked. And I wanted to make this video to kind of talk about, obviously it's been talked about enough. Why Shedeur hasn't been off the board, why he's taken so long, why teams aren't, there's a lot of theories. I've seen a lot of outlandish stuff that I'm not going to get into. A lot of stuff that, just doesn't relate to football. On the field stuff, off the field stuff, and it all plays a factor, I think. But I wanted to talk today about something that I think not a lot of people are thinking about when it comes to the Shedeur Sanders situation and why he's not being drafted right now. Listen, it's very clear that this was a weak quarterback class compared to other years. Okay, only 2 quarterbacks went in the first round. It's the first time in I think 10 years or so that there's only been 1 quarterback taken within the top 20 something picks, I think. Just down year in the class, and everybody knew that going in. Nobody thought, even Cam Ward being drafted number 1 overall, he wasn't a surefire, this guy's going to be a stud. He's got a lot of question marks around him as well. He just so happened to be the best prospect, and the Titans needed a quarterback. So he goes 1. As for everything else, there were teams that desperately need a quarterback. There were teams that passed on Shedeur. I got to turn these notifications off, guys. I'm sorry. There were teams that passed on a quarterback in round 1 that had an opportunity in round 2 and 3 that also passed on him. Now, I think that is why I'm making this video, because if it were to be just one time around, I would understand. Maybe you really aren't that high on him, and you just don't think the value is there at the pick. I understand. Like the Browns, like the Saints, even Pittsburgh, at pick 20, I think. Those in the first round, although it sucked, and a lot of, from what the media was pushing about how you're going to see 2 quarterbacks in the top 3 and, potentially 3 quarterbacks in round 1 if Jackson Dart would have been in mocks going round 1. That was what a lot of people were saying. And so when that didn't happen, when the past 3 months of every media outlet you see pushing a Shedeur Sanders, is he going number 1? Is he going number 2? And that doesn't happen, it's going to come as a shock. But the thing I think a lot of people aren't thinking about is the level of just, how do I describe this? Man, there's just so many underlying factors that come with Shedeur Sanders. Everyone's talking about Deion Sanders. Now, do I think Deion Sanders is a problem? A little bit. Obviously, we've seen how it can affect other athletes. Sometimes for the better. Odell Beckham Jr.'s dad, famously got him out of Cleveland when he was on the Browns. You see it a lot in other athletes as well, other sports. It's a common thing. There's parents that speak up. I think the most notable, although he did it in a cool way, LeVar Ball. Okay, I'm sure a lot of teams were kind of scared to see how LeVar was going to be, because he clearly had a vision for his sons, and for the most part, he's stayed true to that, and he's done a good job. But other times, it doesn't go as smoothly, and I think the NFL was so scared of this. But that is obvious. That's one of the reasons. The thing I want to point out is the truth that today, in the second and third round, 3 more quarterbacks besides Cam Ward and Jackson Dart were drafted over Shedeur Sanders. And I'm not going to dispute that Shedeur Sanders is better or is worse than them, but that is not true. Shedeur Sanders, arguably, whether depending on how you like it, Jackson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, consensus is Shedeur Sanders is better than him. But regardless, he's a top 3 quarterback in the class. Regardless, undeniably. So why is Dylan Gabriel getting picked? Why is Tyler Shaw, if that's how you pronounce it, getting picked out of Louisville? Because the teams that are picking quarterback this year are very clear, and this is kind of the whole point of this video that I'm going through. They aren't picking these guys to be starters. I think that's something that a lot of these media outlets don't understand. They are picking Dylan Gabriel to be a good backup, and in case he needs to go in, he can be there. Tyler Shaw, a good backup, okay? A young guy. Like Davis Mills a couple years ago. He drafted and he started as a rookie. He's never going to be a starter again, okay? You cannot draft Shedeur Sanders to be a backup. So why would you? If you need a backup quarterback, why would you draft Shedeur Sanders? Because immediately the fan base is going to be hooked on him. He's a polarizing player that a lot of people want. A lot of casual fans hear about and are going to scrutinize you if you don't start him. Okay? He himself won't want to be a backup. He thinks he's, like every player thinks he's deserving of a starting job. Fair enough. Where Deion Sanders gets involved is what makes it messy. Because if he sees his son not get on the field, maybe if he was behind a respected starter for a couple years, he wouldn't say anything. But if you don't want Deion or Shedeur Sanders to be your future, and you kind of just want him to be a backup, no one's going to draft him. Teams like the Browns, why would they want all that drama backstage when he's not the guy you want in your future? They're looking at next year. Okay? The Seahawks with Jalen Milroe, they're looking later on. Do you really think if the Seahawks drafted Shedeur Sanders after just paying over $100 million to another quarterback, that would go over well? No. Even if the team itself knows he's not going to be the starter, the fans don't, because they think he's a number 2 overall guy. He's that quality. And he might be. He might be, but teams weren't sold on him. Okay? And that just goes about with the draft class quality. The Browns are thinking about next year. They don't want to have a backup Shedeur Sanders that's going to cause a bunch of drama. And a lot of things people don't understand. When you draft a guy, you don't just have him for a year. Do you guys remember how much flack the Cardinals got? Not for drafting Kyler Murray, but for not using Josh Rosen, not giving him a chance. Now, I get it. Josh Rosen was a bum, okay? And they made the right decision. But to this day, people still are like, why would you even draft Josh Rosen? Blah, 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 blah. It is, at the end of the day, it's a business, okay? But if you have a franchise, say the Browns, a historic franchise in the terms of not being able to get quarterback right. Say you draft Shedeur Sanders, even with the intention of him being a backup, but Joe Flacco gets hurt week 1. Shedeur goes in there, and he plays the rest of his rookie year. But in the back of your mind, you don't want him as your quarterback, so you draft a guy next year. Imagine how much scrutiny Cleveland would have. And then that makes your franchise look bad. That makes you look like you don't know how to do business. Because you ruined a guy. You ruined another one. Typical Browns. But the whole time, they didn't want him to be the guy. Seattle isn't looking at Jalen Milroe thinking he's the guy. He's a guy. He's a solid guy. He's the backup guy. Shedeur Sanders will not tolerate being a backup. And so because of that, there isn't a role in the NFL that a team is 100% committed to him. The Saints don't want him. If you're a team and you truly want to find a franchise quarterback, wait for the perfect guy. I've always said that. When the Rams were having mock drafts saying they were going to draft Jackson Dart, now I get it, Giants are really high on him. Personally, I'm not. Okay? So when I saw that, I was kind of frustrated. No. Draft a corner. You have Matthew Stafford for a couple more years. Okay? Draft a linebacker. Draft anything else. You can worry about that when you need to. If you don't need to right now, it doesn't matter. Teams like the Giants, if they draft Shedeur Sanders or not, they're still going to be bad. So you might as well wait another year. Obviously, they picked Jackson Dart. But what I'm saying is, in situations like that, you might as well wait another year where you are 100% confident that that's the guy. Because like I said, you put him on the bench, he's not going to be fine with that. Deion Sanders is not going to be fine with that. And then you got to deal with the media. Always talking. What are the Seahawks doing? They drafted blah, 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 and they're not using them. One of the most popular players in college football, one of the most popular players in football in general, Shedeur Sanders. The backup. That's not going to happen. They'll stick with Jalen Milroe. They'll stick with Dylan Gabriel. They'll stick with Tyler Shaw, who keep their mouths shut. And I'm not blaming Shedeur. I think that's a lot of misconception about this whole situation. As people in the media are kind of saying stuff like this, and then people think they're blaming him. No. Go out there. Try to be a winner. Talk your shit. I respect it. But this is the downside of it. Because when there's not a role open, and there's not a situation waiting for you, this is what can happen. We've seen it in years past, with quarterbacks slipping. And we're seeing it here in drastic scale as we're going into day 3 now. Still doesn't have a team. So I want you to, from this video, okay, I just had to talk about it real quick. One thing I want you guys to take from this, I don't think NFL teams are saying Dylan Gabriel's the guy over Shedeur Sanders. Tyler Shaw is the guy. The 25-year-old who can't stay healthy is the guy. No. It's a business. There's politics involved. There's a lot of extra stuff that goes on behind the scenes that gets taken into consideration amongst those draft rooms. And as much as it sucks, I do think Shedeur Sanders will find a situation, and we'll see how he can capitalize on that. Regardless, what I was saying before the draft, I didn't say it on this channel, I was just talking to some buddies about it. I said, if he didn't get picked by the Saints at 9, and he didn't get picked by the Steelers at 20, those were his 2 big situations. That back half of the first round, maybe a couple teams. The one thing I was thinking about was potentially the Rams drafting him and stashing him for a couple years behind Stafford. That being a guy that is their franchise guy until he retires. But even that I wasn't too high on. I thought they were going to draft Will Johnson, and then the Rams traded back. But other than that, it was like the Chiefs, Eagles, all the best teams already have a quarterback. So he's not going to go there. All the top 10, 15 teams didn't want anything to do with him. So you might have seen it when it came back around. We didn't. The Browns have made it very clear they want to lose this year. I'm not saying I respect it, but I'm not saying I don't understand. Next year's a better draft class for quarterbacks. Say the Browns have the number 1 pick next year, that puts them in a better situation. If they feel that's a better situation for them, then why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? So that's what I'll say. Hope Shedeur Sanders gets put in a good situation. I do think wherever he goes, he will have an opportunity. But whether it's the 4th round, 5th round, hell, the way things are going, you really can't predict. He could be undrafted. Who knows? We'll have to see. Regardless, guys, that is my take. I'm Teddy Ball. Thank you guys for watching Ball Knowledge with Teddy Ball. And I'll see you guys next time.